educate and be a storyteller. So it's just important to really educate on the rationale, the data, giving them that flexibility within the tools that they have. Educate them quite a bit on, the impact of that local content, giving them those, resources that provide that flexibility to localize.
What is the biggest challenge in scaling a franchise brand that most people underestimate?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. One is working through the early adopters to refine the system or models, because obviously when you're starting a business, we have some ideas and hypotheses around, even who the target customer is and what's going to connect with them. But then as you start to gain those followers and customers and the brand matures, you learn a lot and you start to pivot even, what the brand maybe is about or how we're talking about products or services. But also the franchisees are the same, right? Like you have high entrepreneurial spirit in a lot of the early adopters, and then, pivoting that into a mature brand where you have a lot more franchise owners that come through that want to follow a system and more be told what to do. It changes the support. So it's challenging, it's fun, but it keeps everyone on their toes and we're constantly learning throughout.
You have worked across different franchise growth stages. What is one marketing or sales strategy that works well for emerging brands but becomes less effective as a franchise matures?
In terms of franchise support, we simply have to be more strategic in where we focus our energies. So we have to vet strategies more thoroughly and pick the few that will have, the most impact rather than throwing a lot of irons in the fire, which a lot of times when you're smaller, newer, you can be more nimble in that way because you're just trying to test a whole lot of different things. But then as we get bigger, we have to communicate what the strategy is to the franchisees, our internal teams, the franchisees, employees a lot of times, and just be kind of lock solid and thorough in how we put together those strategies and what we work on. We just don't have the capacity to try a whole bunch of different things because, now it impacts 100, 200, 300 franchisees versus just 10, right? And so
100%.
And honestly on the local level too, the tactics don't change a lot, between those different stages. But in the launch phase when, there's less brand awareness in a given market, franchisees do have to be really efficient with their dollars. And we really advise them, do that in a smaller geographical area and then expand to increase their book of business, so we call it, land and then expand. So get really tight, in your geographics and do all the best practices there and then grow from there.
So you have led teams in implementing scalable systems. If you could only rely on one technology or one tool to streamline franchise operations and marketing, which one would it be and why?
Yeah, well, the analytics nerd in me would say Excel, which is not the answer you're looking for. but
I love that.
It's so great, especially early on if you don't have, resources for full dashboards and analytics in that way, you can still do a ton in Excel. But the real answer would be, really a system like HubSpot is who I'd plug. That is able to do a lot of the tracking that you can get in Google Analytics. You can connect those, of course, too. But, it's really tracking, a customer through that journey, whether it be a franchise candidate, or an end consumer. You're able to really see that customer journey. And that kind of data and input is super critical in marketing, obviously. But there's marketing automation that can happen with that, too. So based on, behaviors or actions that they're taking, trigger messaging or emails, retargeting, any of that out to them. And so it really helps you be lean within marketing for what you're using it for.
Two more questions. So philosophy and guiding principle. You have been deeply involved in franchise leadership and development. What is one guiding principle that has helped you create sustainable growth in franchise systems?
Yeah, it's really educate and be a storyteller. So, franchisees and then our teams, everyone wants to succeed, right? But many people are skeptical by nature, especially when money is involved. Yeah, when you have, your family or your livelihood on the line and it requires a lot of dollars to grow a business, people are very skeptical, of course. So it's just important to really educate on the rationale, the data, all of that, the facts kind of behind why we are making certain decisions or why we are suggesting certain strategies. So educate, but then you can storytell around it. So that's what people connect with is, how can we tell the story about maybe another franchisee that tried this marketing strategy and it really worked. And here's how, that customer responded to it. Or, I think one of the traps that we have to deal with a lot is, people want to put themselves and their own preferences and opinions into whether or not they're thinking about whether or not something's going to work or whether they like, a certain, let's say, content piece or not. But they're not the end consumer usually. And so it's important to tell that story about, okay, this is the target, homeowner demographic and here's the data we have, but here's what the story tells us around that.
Last question, promise. And it's kind of along the lines as well, right? So franchisors have to balance brand and consistency with franchisee independence. How do you ensure franchisees have the freedom to localize their marketing while maintaining a unified brand presence?
So, we try to give them ample resources and really be the example for them, first and foremost. So, we have a brand hub. A lot of franchisors do eventually, but, we're giving them, all the different, brand guidelines, logos, colors, assets that they need. But it's creating a lot of those templates that can be flexible for the local flair, so whether it's social media kind of graphics where they can drop in their own local photo of maybe a project or a job that they did, or a happy customer and those sorts of things, but giving them that flexibility within the tools that they have. Now, we do, of course, educate them quite a bit on, the impact of that local content and then how to do it properly. Certainly, we can't do it all the time, but we do keep our eyes open and audit and re-engage with franchisees that maybe aren't hitting the brand guidelines as much as we'd like, and just re-educate them on that and kind of bring them back into the fold. But yeah, it's really about that. It's about, educating on the why behind the brand, the logo in particular, and why it is the way it is, how that connects with that customer, and then giving them those, resources that provide that flexibility to localize.